Imagine going back in time to make some changes in your life. What do most people regret? The research varies, but there are some common threads. Many people regretted breaking up with someone. Also on the list, they regretted not taking more risks, working too much, not spending enough time with friends and family, and not having enough confidence. Here's an interesting one. Many people regretted not standing up to that bully in school or at work. This might be the most important one. Many people regretted not taking care of their health. What can you do? Find what gives you joy, meaning, and purpose, and dedicate time to that activity. Occasionally, step out of your comfort zone and do something uncomfortable, which I'm about to do. The last time I did television, Billy Don't Be a Hero was a hit song. Billy, don't be a hero. Stepping back into it brought a fear of failing. I had to lean into my fear and share it with you and say I have no regrets.
Oh, look at him now.
I love it. He's great. And you know, a lot of those regrets that he talked about, a lot of people have them.
Right.
But I really believe that if you don't have those, you don't learn from your mistakes and grow. So sometimes it's good to have those.
Yeah, I wish we had more time. We'd go through all of our regrets. It would be so much fun, wouldn't it, here on TV?